Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We don't have much time. What I would like for each of you to do is to give me one advantage, if you can, of the benefits of international standards, and then with time, I'd like you to give me a negative of international standards. So if you could just be as succinct as possible on the benefits.
Sure, I'll start on that one. I think I'll be succinct, but I'll list off at least two benefits of comparable global international standards for financial firms and insurance firms in particular. The first is achieving a level playing field across the world. It's important, I think, for America, as foreign insurers operate in our market, that they be subject to a regulatory and supervisory regime that's at least as tough as ours. We don't want the foreign companies to be able to compete in the United States insurance market on more advantageous terms than our firms are. So having that kind of a comparable global playing field on some of the key regulatory and supervisory standards can be helpful from a global level playing field basis. It can also be helpful, I think, to achieve global financial stability to the extent that particular firms have a very large systemic footprint. As a general matter, systemic risk seeks out the place where it is least regulated, and it tends to collect and deposit there and grow. So having kind of a decent floor around the international regulatory standards can prevent those sort of accumulations of systemic risk cesspools, so to speak. But there are some potential downsides of international regulations as well, and I think the key one is if you have an international regulation that just doesn't work well for some of the major markets, is not well tailored to the risks in those markets, that can obviously result in inferior macroeconomic outcomes for those countries whose firms can't use the rule efficiently.
Mr. McCarty.
I definitely think there is a role for international standards. We have, as Director McGrath has alluded to, for over a dozen years, we've had insurance core principles, which I think are very valuable for evaluating not only a developed country but emerging markets. More and more of our markets are gravitating towards Asia and South America, so it's important that they have core principles in place to provide some guidance on how markets should be regulated in those areas. My concern is not so much on standards, but what the implementation of standards, as my colleague has referred to, that are unimplementable, where you are putting in, for instance, hoisting, for instance, a consolidated capital standard with a group-centric approach like banks use, as opposed to a more emphasis on a capital adequacy test or stress test, and looking at inter-party transactions in ways to limit risk. And I think that it could be a standard, but it's not the standard that seems to be the preference of our colleagues around the world.
Yeah, Mr. McGrath, I'm not sure you said that, but
succinctly, I'll reply to your question.
Yes.
The advantage of global standards is they will promote further opportunities for our companies that are seeking to grow in developing economies in Asia, South America, and Africa. Those supervisors in those countries are looking for common standards, common language. The potential negative is if we, the United States, are not actively engaged, asserting our best practices, our points of view, so that whatever the global standard is, it incorporates, reflects, integrates the best interests of the United States.
Thank you. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.